Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of the Ultimate James Bond review. So after 14 years of Roger Moore, it was time for a fresh face for the series, and they chose Welsh actor Timothy Dalton. And he started off with... The Living Daylights is a really good spy story, much like From Russia with Love is. It has double crosses and espionage as the main focus of the story. The film has a brilliant opening with the skydiving down to the training mission before an assassin intervenes. The revealing shot of Dalton is fantastic and the pursuing fight in the Jeep is awesome, with Bond parachuting out at the last second. Just from the opening alone, it feels like the franchise just has this new energy to it with Dalton. The opening credits with the Aha song is great, and then we get to our main plot where Bond has been hired to help this guy Koskov cross the Austrian border. We see this film's Bond girl Kara, played by Mariam Darbo, before Bond shoots her gun. It turns out Koskov has played both sides and is in cahoots with Brad Whitaker, a warmonger and weapons dealer. We get a brilliant car chase on ice, and then following that a cello case chase across the border to Austria. I love the scenes of Bond and Kara at the fair and at the orchestra. It shows a more human side of Bond and makes him more vulnerable. However, when Saunders is killed, Bond immediately goes into defense mode, and that was the great thing about Dalton's Bond for me, and just in general as an actor. The way he could go from charming and compassionate to a cold-blooded killer in the following scene was so seamless. The guy was able to strike a really good balance. So Bond fake assassinates the new leader of the KGB, General Pushkin, played by John Rhys Davis, aka Sulla from Indiana Jones. Then he heads to Afghanistan where Koskov's base is. They are captured but escape about 5 minutes later, unwittingly freeing Kamran Shah, leader of the Mujahideen, who helps Bond and Kara storm Koskov's base before an awesome fight in the military plane and then helping Shah escape. He then takes out Whitaker and then heads back to Russia to see Kara's performance. The Living Daylights is a really solid film. Dalton is great. Kara plays a decent role in the story, which is nice to see, although her incompetence is often irritating to the audience and Bond. The action set pieces are incredible. The car chase, the fight on the back of the plane, the cello going down the snow hill, and the opening in the Jeep are all memorable. However, where the film falls short is the villains. Koskov is pretty uncompelling and his goal is pretty unclear throughout the film. Necros is just another German strongman, a diet version of Red Grant, and Whitaker is a cartoony mustache twirler. So The Living Daylights gets a 7 out of 10. However, all of these elements were improved upon in Dalton's second film. License to Kill might be the most underrated Bond film. I seriously never hear this one talked about, and honestly this film's kinda great. The film goes for the look and feel of an 80s action film like Lethal Weapon here, and it really works for me. The film has a lot more grit than every other pre-Craig Bond film. I love the setup of the film. The villain Franz Sanchez is beating up a woman in his intro. He's played by the excellent Robert Davi, who you might remember from this.
Could you please take me to the sheriff's station? I can describe all 3 of them.
Who gets caught in an excellent mid-air capture similar to The Dark Knight Rises by Bond and Felix while on their way to Felix's wedding. That night, Bond leaves, and I love this little reference to Tracy.
Is there something wrong? He was married once, but it was a long time ago.
Before Felix and Della are invaded by a young, sexy Benicio del Toro, Della is killed and Felix is mauled by a shark. And I know the grit might be a little too much for Bond fans, but for an 80s action movie, it's kind of perfect. Also, just a small note, but the rearranged theme for this film by Michael Kamen is awesome and one of my favorites. We get a fantastic escape where Sanchez is driven into the sea and freed by divers. Following this, Bond quits MI6 in an amazing scene. I love the look M gives when he escapes.
God help you, Commander.
We meet this film's Bond girl, Pam Bouvier, played by Carrie Lowell, in a great dingy bar scene in Bimini before randomly hooking up as soon as they escape. They go to a hotel where Pam gets a haircut.
Hello? Oh my God! What have you done?
And Q comes on mission to aid Bond, which is great. I love Desmond Llewellyn, and this is by far the best movie he has. He's almost a sidekick or a mentor to Bond. Bond tracks down Sanchez and we get some cat and mouse stuff between the two. Then we get a final scene where Bond infiltrates Sanchez's base before we get an incredible chase with the tankers, before Bond lights up Sanchez. It's absolutely great. Then in the last 2 minutes though, we get a kind of weird rom-com love triangle with Bond, Pam and Lupe, which kind of comes out of nowhere and doesn't really match the rest of the film. But regardless, License to Kill is a great Bond film. Dalton is at his best and I love the whole revenge angle of the story. Bond actually showing the lengths he's willing to go to for his friends. Pam is a great Bond girl. I always like Bond girls who can hold their own, like Anya, Holly, or Wei Lin. Sanchez is a fantastic villain. You legitimately hate him, and I like how him and Bond are always neck and neck with each other. The two have a great back and forth as well. I like the grit as well, and maybe with another Bond it would have been difficult to accept the tone, but the way Dalton is able to change emotions on a dime really helps. As much as I like The Living Daylights, it does still feel like a Roger Moore Bond film, but this has its own style and identity. It's a new and bold vision for what Bond could be, but unfortunately the audiences didn't really connect with it, and I hope newer audiences can discover what a great action movie this is. However, as mentioned previously, the film didn't really resonate with audiences, and ultimately the film was pretty weak financially. So Bond disappeared with the very end of the Cold War. Fatigue had finally hit after receiving a film every 2 years since 1965, and before that 4 years straight, so questions were being asked if Bond had a place in this fast-moving society. Society's attitudes towards the character could be summed up in one sentence.
Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War.
So the franchise needed a reboot, and a complete one. Not just a new Bond, but a new M, a new director, a new visual style, utilize CGI, and most of all embrace the madness of what this franchise could be. And in 1995, James Bond returned in the best possible way with GoldenEye is amazing. To me, this is hands down one of the best and most memorable action movies possibly ever. Almost everything about this film is awesome. The opening scene with Bond jumping off the dam, the excellent introduction of Brosnan in the bathroom, and then convening with 006 played by Sean Bean. The scene is a great setup with the introduction of Oromov and the fake-out death of Trevelyan before the incredible stunt of Bond driving off the cliff and getting into the plane, followed by my favourite Bond opening title scene. The imagery of the girls around the crumbling Soviet and communist statues is so inventive, and the Tina Turner song is so powerful and grand. I like the 9 years later scene driving around with Xenia in the DB5, although it is funny that his rickety 30-year-old car is keeping up with this full-on Ferrari. The film has a particularly dark element when the programmers of Seven Eye are massacred, and the one survivor is this film's Bond girl, Natalia. So the GoldenEye is a satellite that can send out EMPs, and they have a helicopter which can withstand one. We are introduced to our new M, played by Judi Dench, who is absolutely fabulous and wonderful. She really puts Bond in his place. We meet the main villain then, Janice, who actually turns out to be 006, whose parents were Russians. Bond and Natalia get out of the Tiger Copter before we get one of the greatest action pieces in the franchise with the incredible tank chase. Then they get on a train and Bond frees Natalia while killing Oromov. Then they head to Cuba.
My whole life I dreamed about coming to the Caribbean.
Say live and let die.
To find the satellite, where we get an incredible third act. The tense scenes of Natalia disabling the satellite and the incredible fight between Bond and Trevelyan, eventually ending with Bond dropping a shit ton of rubble onto him. Although I feel like this would have been a great setup to have him in sequels here, when it turns out he survived the drop. But that's just my fanfic mind kicking in, but GoldenEye is such a great Bond adventure. The great spy narrative. Brosnan is amazing. He oozes charm and sexiness. Natalia is one of the absolute best Bond girls. The action is amazing. Judi Dench is great. But what puts this film head and shoulders above a lot of other films is the villain ensemble. Alec is a great Bond equal and a genuine threat. Xenia is so amazing. I can't put it into words how great she is, so I'll just let this explain. Oromov is a great villain compared to the other generic Russian generals, and Alan Cumming is so great and funny as Boris. The film is like turning all these great Bond elements up to 11, and it works perfectly. I know people don't like the score, but apart from the end credits song, I actually really enjoy the new take on the themes. So I was stewing on this for a while, but after 17 films, GoldenEye gets a 10 out of 10. But the question was if they could replicate that success with the next film.
Tomorrow never dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies is great fun. Right from the get-go, it has a fantastic pre-credit scene with a race against the clock type scenario, with Bond escaping a Russian arms deal before it gets blown up. The song for this, however, is one of the weakest in the entire franchise. I don't particularly like Sheryl Crow's singing, and the song is lackluster as well as the design of the pre-credit scene. They should have gone with Surrender by Katie Lang, which is actually the song I put in the intro and a way better Bond theme. The movie has a really dark opening with a guy named Stamper murdering a bunch of British Navy officers after their ship is supposedly sunken by Chinese fighters. But actually it is this film's main villain, called Elliot Carver, played by the brilliant Jonathan Pryce, who is manufacturing war for the purpose of being the first to cover it and publish it. Basically playing God and reporting the news, which is a brilliant goal for a Bond villain. This is so much fun and he is easily the best part of the film, constructing chaos for a personal gain, much like Goldfinger.
Call the president. Tell him if he doesn't sign the bill lowering the cable rates, we'll release a video of him with a cheerleader in the Chicago motel room.
Come on, darling, let's go. 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Ha ha! We get one of the best Bond and Moneypenny jokes, and then he heads to a party to celebrate the launch of Carver's new media network, where he meets his wife Paris, played by Terry Hatcher, who is an old flame of Bond, and we see this film's Bond girl, Wei Lin, played by Michelle Yeoh. We see Paris reference how Elliot would have been taken out by the Me Too movement.
I'm thinking of getting Wei Lin behind a news desk.
That's wonderful. I'm sure she won't resist too much.
And yeah, Elliot is bad, but at least he didn't make Fox News.
No.
Of course, the most famous Australian is also the most evil one. Then Bond shuts down Carver's media conference and sleeps with Paris before he is killed by Dr. Kafka, who kind of feels like he should be played by Sacha Baron Cohen. I love the moment where Bond kills him in cold blood. We get that awesome car chase in the car park with the phone-controlled Beamer, crashing it into an AVIS. The following day he goes to the South China Sea where he and Wei Lin are captured before being brought to Carver, where he reveals his plan before we get this great little line from Bond.
I would have thought watching your TV shows was torture enough.
They escape capture and we get an awesome motorbike chase of Bond and Wei Lin, handcuffed to him. This scene has great stunt work and I like the little gimmick of the handcuffs, and it adds more stakes to the scene and makes the scene more fun and creative. Wei Lin then leaves before they reconvene in her base, and we get this little annoying bit.
On second thoughts, you type.
You forget I took a first in Oriental Languages at Cambridge.
So they head to Carver's ship and Jonathan Pryce hams it up so much and it's so great. There's some good action here, but Michelle Yeoh is the real standout. Then Bond kills Carver in the most brutal way before defeating Stamper, who I guess had a more personal vendetta with Bond after having 2 father figures killed. Tomorrow Never Dies though is a ton of fun. To me, this is all of the elements that make a great Bond film done perfectly. Brosnan is at his best in this movie, Jonathan Pryce is amazing, Michelle Yeoh is one of my favourite Bond girls, the action set pieces are fun, and the plot of the villain with orchestrating terror for clicks is brilliant. 8 out of 10. Now on to... The World Is Not Enough is fine. It's kind of the mediocre film of Brosnan's 4. However, it starts with an incredible pre-title sequence. Bond steals back money from a Swiss banker before going back to London, where there is a terrorist attack inside MI6 before Bond goes after the assailant in an awesome boat chase on par with Live and Let Die, with incredible moments like the jump, the flip, Bond going under the bridge, and the moment where Bond grabs on before the girl blows up the balloon, breaking Bond's arm doing so. There is a funeral for the man killed in the attack, Robert King, whose daughter is there. We get our final scene of Desmond Llewellyn as Q before his passing, and I love how Bond actually looks concerned when he tells him he's retiring, as this guy has saved his life countless times and then disappears with this brilliant final line.
And the second?
Always have an escape plan.
He finds Elektra and starts taking care of her, and the two grow closer. Meanwhile, Elektra building a new pipeline for her business. Bond visits Sokovsky and finds out that one of Elektra's guards is in cahoots with one of the film's villains, Renard, before going to a site where he meets nuclear physicist Christmas Jones, played by Denise Richards, who is kind of laughably bad in this film. There's an alright action scene with Renard before we get one of the best Bond James Bonds in the entire franchise.
So you're a British spy. Do you have a name?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Then it's revealed that Elektra is the bad guy and fell in love with Renard when he captured her at a young age. Then we get an okay action scene around Sokovsky's caviar factory before Bond is captured and tortured by Elektra before he kills her in cold blood, which is pretty damn great. The finale takes place in the submarine, which is fine, with Renard before he kills him. And then we get one of my least favourite Bond film endings. There's incredible endings like Casino Royale, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Live and Let Die, which are all great and iconic. And then there's this shit.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
The World Is Not Enough is fine, but unfortunately after the incredible pre-credit scene, the film kind of goes downhill. Seriously, those first 10 minutes are 10 out of 10, but the rest of the film is a letdown. Elektra is kind of a cool villain, but I've heard people say that Bond was falling in love with her, and I'm looking at this wondering, okay, where though? Renard is there, I guess. To me, there's nothing particularly interesting about this character. Denise Richards is kind of awful, and whenever she has to spout technical dialogue, it's laughable. The action scenes are all kind of boring in comparison to the thrilling opening boat chase. Like, that should have been the finale, but instead we get this clumsy fight in the submarine. The plot just ends up being, let's threaten everyone with a nuclear bomb again, and there's something off about Brosnan in this film. When he says some of the iconic lines, there's just something weird about it. But unfortunately, outside of the pre-title sequence, there's not much else about the film that would have me coming back to watch it again. 5 out of 10. Now what you've been waiting for.
This is where the fun begins.
This movie sucks. The starting gun barrel has a bullet for some reason, and then Bond surfs into North Korea. Right from the get-go, you can tell the lighting is really weird. We meet our North Korean villain, General Moon, who is American for some reason.
I know all about the UN. I studied at Oxford and Harvard. Majored in Western hypocrisy.
Oh, he studied Western hypocrisy. We get a hovercraft fight, which is decent, and then Bond gets saved by the bell. Before being captured, and we get the terribly, overly long credit scene. The Madonna song is utter trash. This film is so dated, and look, I'll elaborate on this throughout the review, but the weird ice dances, the constant cutting to Bond in pain, and then he heads to the border for what he thinks is execution, and then gets traded with Zhao, who looks goddamn ridiculous with the diamonds in his face. I get what they were going for, but they just look like pimples. It's so stupid. Michael Madsen is the leader of the CIA. I mean, to have such a good actor in such a shit movie, so much waste. Same with Judi Dench, who is in Korea for some reason. And then she tells Bond the price of him was too high, and then we get this bizarre edit, which the film does so many times. I both hate and love hippie hobo Bond because at one case it's a nice juxtaposition, but on the other hand, look at him. Then he goes to Cuba and he hops in a Ford Fairlane. I mean, he should have gotten a Sunbeam Alpine. It's just simple things like that which we can't have. Then we get our intro to the film's Bond girl, Jinx, played by Halle Berry, in a scene that is meant to be like Honey and Dr. No, but it comes across as a parody with the music, the weird slow-mo, and then the dialogue between the two is fucking awful.
So you're gonna be busy tonight with the owls then, huh?
No owls in Los Organos. Nothing to see till the morning. Not out there, anyway.
So what do predators do?
What? Then Bond gets to nut for the first time in 15 months. We get an action scene where Bond breaks into where Zhao is having surgery before he escapes. Then Bond returns to London where they actually play London's Calling. Like, Jesus Christ, this is James Bond, literally the one franchise you don't get to do this in, and of course they do. Then we get our main villain, Gustav Graves, who, apart from Dominic in Quantum of Solace, might be the worst Bond villain. You immediately want to punch him in the face and drop a nuke on London, just so any person who speaks and acts like that is eliminated. A Bond villain should at least be cool and antagonizing. This is just some sniveling, pompous asshole. I'd never be threatened by this idiot, and he's just the annoying dickhead version of Bond. Then Madonna shows up, and I'm seriously considering cancelling this review. Rosamund Pike is one of the gems of this movie, but she's immediately paired with a terrible backstory of being an Olympic fencer. I do actually like the scene of the sword fight. It's intense and hard hitting, although Graves is still acting like a petulant child. And then we get our remember this scene with all the gadgets, which is nice to see, but it makes no goddamn sense why he'd keep these things. Bond is only sentimental about 3 things: the DB5, his Walther PPK, and Tracy. That's it. Not the fucking crocodile from Octopussy. So it turns out that Graves, aka General Moon, in disguise has created the satellite which will act as a second sun called Icarus. Fuck. At least the other films in the franchise had some grasp on reality, but this is just ridiculous. Bond gets with Frost, and this really sucks because Rosamund Pike is such a great actress, and if they wanted to go for a love angle with, I reckon I could have bought it because she's smart, sexy, can hold her own, and would make a great Bond equal. But unfortunately they just go down the old been there done that of having her be a henchman. Didn't they just do this in the last movie? Then we see Jinx get tortured before Bond fights the henchman Mr. Kill. Fuck me.
Who sent you?
Your mama. And she told me to tell you she's really disappointed in you.
And then Jinx drops a yo mama joke before they escape. Yada yada yada, the exposition of this dumbass story the movie calls a plot, before Graves fires up the weapon and then Bond escapes in the little ice jet, and we see one of the most infamous scenes in movie history of Bond windsurfing. The CGI is terrible, the ice looks straight out of Ice Age, Brosnan's movements look so weird, everything about this is just wrong. The car chase following is fine, except the editing is real strange. Then Bond frees Jinx by ramming the car through an ice wall. Am I losing anyone yet? So then they get onto Graves' ship and...
You serious?
He looks so goddamn fucking stupid. This is what a 10-year-old would think a cool villain looks like. He's even got speeds. Then Graves kills his father, and I think the editor was drunk while doing this. Bond and Graves have a terrible fight, and so do Jinx and Frost. A Ferrari falls out of the plane from however many feet, and then it's just fine, it just lands in mud. Bond and Jinx get in a chopper and fly out. Then we get the worst scene in the film to me. We see Moneypenny chucking on some VR of Bond, which was programmed how? And then she dreams of her and Bond about to get it on in her office, which just goes against everything the character was about. She was the one person Bond couldn't have, and they had a great back and forth, but then this completely goes against her character. If you wanted this to be real, because it's been 40 years of foreplay, then fuck it I guess, but here, no!
See? It's a perfect fit.
Leave it in.
Well, it's gotta come out sooner or later.
Then Bond makes a dumb joke and thank God this is over. This film is utter garbage. It's cut from the same cloth as many early 2000s shit shows. It just feels like someone watched Austin Powers without actually having watched any other James Bond movies. And going on the tropes parodied by the Austin Powers movie, someone crafted a James Bond movie from that. That's just my personal take on what this feels like. It goes completely overboard on CGI, whereas every other film in the series was famous for its brilliant practicality. This one goes balls to the wall in the wrong direction. The car chase and sword fight are alright, but that's because they're real. They wasted Rosamund Pike as a Bond girl, Halle Berry I've never really liked, Brosnan phones it in, Graves/Moon sucks as a villain with his dumb costume and punchable face, his hammy overacting is so bad and it doesn't work like it did with Jonathan Pryce, but thank God this franchise got rebooted, because it could not end with this drivel. 2 out of 10, fuck you. So thanks for watching guys, please remember to subscribe to The Young Cynics, I'll be back next time with the Daniel Craig films, please like and share the video, and until next time, goodbye.
Yes.
Seriously.